Hey guys, Henning and Morten from FlippedNormals. Today we are going to show you some lighting. I think that is the first time in this new era of FlippedNormals where we've actually done some live lighting.
It's been a long time now.
Yeah, it has. And so we just want to take you through some of the basics of lighting. It's not going to be super in-depth, but it's sort of to get you started with doing your own lighting setups and hopefully making something really nice and not too long. So we're gonna it's not gonna focus so much on the software. We're using V-Ray for Maya in this one, but these principles apply to lighting in general. It's lighting as a whole. You could do this in real life as well.
Yeah.
Just take a little longer probably.
Yeah. No render time though.
Yeah, that's true. So we're gonna cover sort of basic 3-point lighting and try to experiment a little with it. Sort of play around with the colors and materials on meshes and stuff, just to see how can we change the feel of the image.
I feel lighting is often something people overlook, because it's just, you're just placing a light, or you're just putting in like an IBL, like an image-based lighting or something like that. But lighting is really like the stage where you're putting all the emotion into it.
Yeah.
Like you can make something go from incredibly soft and sweet to really like horrible and dark just by changing a single light here.
Yeah. So what we've done so far is just set up a little lighting environment. We have a sphere that I've just made non-double-sided so I can see through it.
Yeah.
I have a soft plane going up behind here just so we can actually, so we get like this nice fall off with the light behind us, and then we just have our subject, which it's a hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the first part of this is our little light here. So what I'm gonna do is just make this invisible, because it's annoying to look at and it gets in your way, unlike in real life where you can't do that with lights.
And also please note that we are using area lights for everything here. I very rarely actually light something without using area lights.
Yeah, it's mostly that. I sometimes maybe
it's like point lights if you're doing like a light bulb or something, but and obviously directional light if you're using the sun. But in general, it's pretty much all area lights. Area lights are super nice because first you have a lot of control on them. Like let's say you make them really small, you can have really harsh and long shadows. If you make them really big, they can look just incredibly broad and soft.
Yeah.
So they just have a lot of variation in them.
So the first thing here is we're just gonna set up our key light. So this is what's gonna be filling most of the scene with light. This is what we want our main focus to be. So this really dictates the emotion that you want to get across. If we move this to another position, we will get a different feel.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about having a gradient background like this is you can see we get this with the area light soft shadow that sort of falls off and then it just disappears. We get this nice gradient around our subject.
Very comfortable to look at.
Very comfortable. And so sometimes you wanna light in a completely neutral environment, but most of the time I prefer to use some sort of colored lights. I usually do this by temperature. And the nice thing about V-Ray, just have the temperature slider here, and I can go between different kinds of feels. You know, how do I want this picture to feel like? So for the key light for this one, I'll just add a little bit of warm colors into it, just to make it slightly more friendly, I guess. So it's like it's nice and soft.
Yeah, if your lights are completely white, it will look sterile and dead. Like even if you assume that your light bulbs and your light around you is white, it's really not white. If you take a picture right now of like a white piece of paper, and you're gonna see that there is a lot of color in it. Like the ambient light is, at least if you're outside, is most likely going to be blue because of the sky. Yeah, and
even during the night, you know, it can become quite blue.
There's so much color in the world which we just don't really see until you start properly observing it.
And one thing you'll notice, so this is my approach, my personal approach to lighting, is that I never want anything to be perfect. I want to add a little bit of variation to everything, so I'm changing I'm not having this be like a perfectly rectangular light. I want to change the size a little bit. The same goes for this one. I have it at an off angle here, so it's not perfectly aligned to my mesh, just to add a little bit of realism to the picture.
Yeah.
And then I'll go in for this one. We'll probably have a little bit of a colder temperature to it, just a tiny bit, just to complement what we're doing with our key light here.
And these temperature here, they're just in Kelvin.
Yes.
But you can also just, like, if you're not in V-Ray or whatever it is you're doing, even if you're on V-Ray, I personally prefer just to stick to colors instead of using temperature. That's totally personal preference. It doesn't, if you have a Kelvin of 6,497, or if you're just putting in, like I said, a blue color, I mean, it's identical.
Yeah. And then, so with this is just, so now we have, let's say we have a basic setup here. And right now, all these 3 lights they have the same kind of intensity to them, which sort of washes out the hand a little bit, or subject a little bit, because it's getting lit equally from these 3 directions. Yeah. So one thing that does help is, you're offsetting the lights a little bit, and then you can start playing around with your intensity, saying you don't want as much, warmth from this light over here, and maybe I don't want as much cool from this light over here. I'm thinking I could add some more intensity from the one in the front, just to make that even more, like, stand out even more. Let's see. The nice thing about making them invisible is that they're not going to obscure the camera. So you could have like a camera light that's right in front of the camera like this to act like a flash. That's already looks like a flash. It's interesting with flashes that it sort of makes it look more 3D. Yeah. Because you get these instant sort of Lambert-like shadows around you.
Yeah, you just want to get this like Fresnel effect around it.
Yeah, exactly.
I really dislike the look of a flash. Everything just looks super flat. I prefer like more top down. Like pretty much what you have here.
Yeah.
And you can also see this. The more top down something is, the higher contrast something is. So if you want to make somebody feel really old, you can make it really high contrasty. And if you want to make somebody feel really young, you make it more low contrasty. So if you want to have like an old person here, you would maybe have the light from the top, or an old hand. Or if you want to make it really, like a young and beautiful hand, you have the light more from the front. Yeah. Just because there are less shadows then.
So you can see the way that we've lit it now is sort of 3/4 top from this one here. So it's like maybe at a 45-degree angle. So it's slightly down, but lighting our subject here, which gives us some really soft shadows everywhere. And with the added stuff we get in from the sides, it really makes it smooth. You can see how smooth the background feels as well. So that has a very sort of wholesome, warm feel to it. One thing that you can play around with as well is, so I've set up this environment here. Right now everything just has a neutral gray on it. So that's why everything looks the way it does. But you can change everything about this. So let's get a V-Ray material on this.
Like this setup here is an incredibly quick setup. This isn't something that we built this from scratch in like 2 minutes just before the video.
So let's do a blue one here. Let's see. And now you can see we're starting to get some blue bounce in here as well. This, you can make this more apparent by maybe you're adjusting your GI slider, or however you're playing around with it, or maybe it's like it's a really bright color that would then start to bounce in on your mesh as well. So we're just going to test out some reflections here on the floor just to see how we can change the feel of this image. So right now it's very warm. I've seen a lot of people put out like Houdini renders and mantra renders on Instagram and stuff, so a lot of reflections on them. So I'll try to do something similar there. So I'll add some reflections, reflecting color, and then I'll turn off the Fresnel color. So
just so we can actually see what we're doing for now.
Yeah, exactly. So see how that already changes it quite dramatically just by having a black background.
Yeah.
And we'll do some glossiness here.
It's very fashion-like now.
It looks pretty fashion.
Like you're selling a cell phone or something.
And it's cool because you see the reflections of the light sort of hit the background as well. And for something like that, you could, and maybe you wanted to do something more extreme, more top-down like that.
Sometimes you'll even paint with reflections as well. Like you put up lights which only reflect; they don't actually do anything else. Yeah, and which is totally breaking every kind of law of nature.
Sometimes what I do a lot, also with the lighting scene that we've created, is that we'll just light link. So maybe these lights here, you can see this has a very dramatic feel to it now. But once we add these back in, now these start to affect the background as well. Maybe you only want these to affect the hand and not the background itself. So you can go around, and play with that.
I highly recommend sticking to physically plausible as a starting point.
Exactly.
Like if you start off with light linking everything is going to be a huge mess, and you're going to be looking at it and thinking that something is off. I can't tell what it is. Well, it's because you have 16 lights all light linked to individual things here. There's no unity.
It becomes pretty tricky to keep track of what you're doing if you're not careful with it.
Yeah.
So I would say for like extreme cases where I remember we had one for our lighting scene where it was actually something kind of like this, but I wanted a sort of red, not a rim light per se, but a more like a red light on the hand. But I didn't really want that to affect the ground because I really liked how the ground looked. So I just sort of made that not hit the ground at all.
Yeah. But that's again the whole thing, what we just talked about, right? You know the rules and then you break them.
So that's what we could do now. Let's say now we have a 3-point light setup. It's not like a classic one where you have a key fill or a rim light or anything, but rim lights for me, I think is something like, it's kind of like lens flares. You should use them sparingly.
Yeah.
It can
or
get
with intent.
Yeah, with intent. Yeah. So you don't just want rim on everything because it can get quite extreme.
Yeah.
So let's just add some evil looking light from back here.
I know you're getting a lot of focus as well on one finger.
Yeah. So you can see. So this is with the same intensity as everything as this one now. So it becomes quite intense. But with these super saturated colors for lights, you can actually just take down the intensity of a light quite a lot, and then just have it sort of, you want the audience to feel that there's been some light there, like some sort of, like a hint of the red, but not necessarily too much.
I think that adds a lot to it, like these super subtle fill lights, because you can feel them, even though you can't necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily know that it's there.
Yeah, so see how now we're getting this spill on the ground a little bit, and we're getting a little bit of a darker red rim on there. Yeah. So if we were to enable this again, there's still going to be the hint of it back here, and we definitely see it on the background, but it's not as strong.
Yeah.
So this is a way that for you to like play around with it once you sort of I feel like lighting is one of those things. It takes a long time to figure out how does it, like, what looks nice, but it's not a complicated process in order to set up your lights.
No, it's one of these that it takes a long time to simplify it down. After a while, you can do most things with like 2 or 3 lights, but it's getting those lights into the exact same position. It's really about like building an artistic eye for this.
So let's say we're happy about this one now, and so we'll show you 2 different lights here, light setups here, and we'll do the other one now. So we'll just render this out so we can save it for later.
Yeah.
There we go. And so we'll do our next one. Let's, in the spirit of the fashion one we had before, I think without reflections though, we'll try to do this a little more dramatic. So as you saw now, I added the blue, sort of hint of blue to the background, and maybe we want something more sickly, maybe something a little more dramatic, and just
finally, if you want to make something more like sickly, you can use colors which aren't often in nature, like this kind of like it's not blue, it's not green, it's like something in between. It just, you wouldn't really see that.
So
with something like big, like colors you often see in nature, like blue for the sky and clear saturated greens like nature, they just feel like very nice and friendly colors.
Yeah. So let's just remove these lights, and we're just left with 1 light. So I think we'll probably do maybe 2 lights for this scene. Let's see.
Already now you can see how much more dramatic it seems. Stuff you can also do to make this here feel more dramatic is to make the lights smaller. The smaller the light is, the harsher the shadows. And generally, harsher shadows means scary.
So I don't want this to be like too over the top here, but I do want it to have a slight green feel to it, even though I've added that to the background as well, just to emphasize a little more on the hand. Let's see here. See if we can get something from behind.
Yeah, if stuff casts shadow like that, it just looks far more dramatic right away.
Yeah.
What I often do as well is, it's kind of like a rule I've heard a lot about in art. It's kind of like this. It's called like the 70-30 rule. It's 70% should be in shadow or 70% should be in light. If it's like 50-50, it becomes a bit boring. Like here, clearly most of this is in shadow. Maybe like 70% here is in shadow, and it just makes it look really dramatic.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
And this is with one light now. Like this is something you could totally present.
Okay, so let's see. Maybe we want. Let's try to play with it from. So it's like. I think I'll definitely introduce a rim as well, because what we have here is like we have something quite dramatic for the hand, but I feel like we're missing out on this section over here. So this section could definitely use just a little bit of it doesn't have to be a lot.
Yeah,
just something that helps us.
It also depends a bit what you want to do as well with it. Like, do you want to convey an emotion as in like a fine art piece, or do you want to display your model? Like, if you were to build a showreel and you have this as your display model, we'd be like, we can't see anything. Yeah, it looks cool, but we can't actually see anything at all. So if you want to use this to properly present your work, I would recommend going with something more neutral and softer. Don't go into like some kind of crazy horror territory here. Just make sure that it looks comfortable but easy to see.
Yeah.
But if you're doing like, a personal piece and you want to just make it look awesome, just go crazy.
Okay.
Rim lights everywhere.
So this is definitely what I want to be careful with. So right now, obviously too intense.
Yeah.
But so now we've switched over from using temperature to using color. So here, I'm going to add sort of a, what do you call it?
Like complementary?
A complementary color to what I have for the green, which in this case would be like a blue purplish color. But, not too much, because we don't want it to be all red light district and stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't want to be all Soho.
Then we can start turning down this, and we really don't want a lot from this one.
No,
it's just
like a hint.
Just a hint that you can start, sort of like you're painting in the light here, just to give a little bit of contour to this part.
And again, add colors to your lights. Like, we can't stress how important this is. Otherwise, it will look sterile. Even if you're doing something, if you're doing something which should be sterile, then just keep it white. But if you're doing anything else, make sure you have nice colors in your lights.
So this one we could probably turn down even more.
So dramatic.
And now we're getting dramatic. And maybe I'll try to add. So these two lights kind of serve as a rim and potentially like kind of fill light a little bit. Even though this, I guess that's kind of our key. But I want to.
We'll see how it changed now, though.
Completely.
Suddenly it went from real dramatic and cool to kind of boring.
So now I'll add a little more of a key here, but we want to do it as a very subtle thing to like bring out it just brings out a little bit of the hand as well.
So instead of being black.
Instead of being black, you could totally do that, but everything you do sort of changes the feel of it. Yeah. From this, where we're missing maybe some of the detail, to this, where we're getting more of the detail in there.
It's really all about something we talked about in some of our other videos as well. Like the art principles is kind of like, what do you want it to feel like?
Yeah.
If you want something to feel super scary and depressing, use scary colors, and use harsh shadows. Keep everything in shadow. You want to feel. Let's say you're doing a room here. The scary room doesn't have a lot of light. It has like one light source with a bunch of long shadows. But then you're doing the same room, but you want to feel cozy and charming. You have big, broad lights from outside. They're warming, just friendly. The exact same room can feel completely different just based on lighting.
You can see you can start to play around with your lights quite a lot. It doesn't have to be 3 or 2 lights. It can be a lot of lights. Oh my god.
So 3-point lighting is also really a starting point.
Yeah.
Like it's not you can use 3 lights and that's it. It's it's just a tool.
So now we're getting into really crappy territory here, because like we're mixing a lot of different colors here. So that's, I like
it
that
more
one.
simpler.
So I think we'll go back to something more like this. More overhead.
Like that.
I think that's cooler. And I've also, one of the things I've done as well is made this a little more moonlighty. So I've cooled this light down a little bit instead of making it the green one. I still have more of a green in the background, but I've added a little more coolness to this light, which sort of makes it appear like we're outside on a on a day with a full moon, maybe.
Just telling a bit more of a story with it.
Yeah. Yes, you can kind of think about these things as you're lighting, as you go along with your lighting as well. Oh, it's a really bright moon now.
Yeah. What I often do as well is I often just go through my lights and I just crank up the intensity by like 20% or something, because I feel that you get so used to it and you get afraid of just really cranking it up. So it's either that or you take it into Photoshop afterwards and just go crazy with contrast. Because you can pretty much always do with a bit more contrast.
Yeah, always. Like whenever we've done lighting and we think, okay, now I think we're pretty much there with the lighting. You take it into Photoshop, just adjust the hue and saturation a little bit, your levels, and then all of a sudden you have a picture that's a million times better.
Yeah, I'm very conservative when I'm lighting, and that's not out of design. That's just because I don't actually realize that it could be a lot better by having a lot of contrast.
So let's see, does this work? It totally works in RT. So you can see there's a bit of a hack, but now we've added a little bit of reflection to the floor here, and I don't want that to show up in my actual floor because that's just distracting. Yeah, you could always paint that out if you're like super crazy about keeping everything real. Yeah. But for this, I'm not.
Again, you use the tools as a starting point.
Yeah.
Also, what we're doing here as well, like in V-Ray and most render engines today, it's so much easier to light than it was when we started out. Like your GI here is essentially in real time. When we were doing this before, you'd have to do test renders all the time. Wait a few minutes for test renders. You'd have to do all kind of crazy hacks with ambient occlusion to make GI and all that kind of stuff. But today you just hit the GI button, which is GI is just short for global illumination. Yeah. It essentially just means that light bounces around, and it when we got GI in the beginning, I think that's like 10 years ago when it really became popular. It was like an instant nice button. Everything
we used to have like 32 lights perfectly spaced in a circle around a mesh or something to cheat GI.
It was miserable. But that only cheated like the ambience of it.
We didn't get the bounce or anything.
No, it's like let's say you have like a red piece of paper and you're a pretty pale dude. Your face would be just red from that piece of paper.
Yeah. So I don't think I want to make too many adjustments to this now, because getting a little bit of the redness into this in terms of the shadows. But now we have, I guess you could call it's a very dramatic look to this. We still have the nice softness of our background, which we wanted to keep because it's really cool. It keeps the focus. If you look at it, you can see there's sort of like this halo around our subject. That's one of the nice things about using a softer background like this. We get a little bit of a complementary color sort of rim around. It's not too much, but it just helps us show the form of the hand a little better. Let me just.
I really like this lighting. I think this looks really good.
So this, obviously very dramatic, and it's still kind of cool. But I think it's like the contrast points of the image are not where I want people to look. I don't want them to look at the wrist and anything. So by just softening this up a little bit, having a little closer in value to the background, you look at the image as a whole instead of just looking at the wrist. Yeah. So let's try and render that and see what it looks like compared to the other one. Let's see. This is what we had before. Let's try and render this now. See if I did it correctly this time. Yay. Okay. So now we have two very different images here, and two very distinct feels, even though it's the same subject, right?
So the last one we did is the top one here. That's probably better for like this one is probably better for like if you want to present your work on ArtStation and it should just look super cool. Yeah, this is probably better. This is better for modeling reel.
Yeah, this would definitely be so one of the things, just a thing we can quickly touch on with in terms of showing off your model, is that having something more neutral, not boring, but more neutral, is really nice because you get to display a lot of the details. See how much of the details, let's pretend there were details here, how they would disappear,
it's
whereas,
all lost.
Oh, there's a wrinkle. Whereas this, you get a really nice sort of mix of colors. Yeah. The sort of standard way to do a 3-point light, I guess, in terms of colors, that you would have a more neutral color as your fill light, and like we did, an orange and a blue to sort of complement each other. So
you can also see something which is kind of interesting. It's the same with characters as well, or modeling as well, that you get to like 80% in like 20% time.
Yeah.
You get super fast. You can see here Morten, he got really quick to a result which looked fairly similar to this. It's like 70-80%.
Yeah.
But then the last 20%, it's always just about subtle tinkering with like the values, the slight colors, light linking, maybe some stuff up here and there. But it's really required to do that. Like, it's the last 20% are not wasted at all. That's really what can separate like a mediocre setup to like a really good one.
You know, maybe for something like this, I guess it's kind of inspired of our lighting scene, which we will show you momentarily.
Yeah.
But for something like this, I'd probably throw on a SS shader, like a subsurface scatter shader, just to get maybe like an additional kind of color in there in the material. That's a small tip if you wanted to do that. So with that said, we're going to jump over to our lighting scene. So here we're just going to take a look at 3 different setups that we made with the lighting scene. We have 18, 19, and 20, 3 quite distinct looking pictures, setups. And it's just to show you the variety that we have in there. I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff in here that you can check out. But one of the things that's nice about the lighting scene, it gives you an option to really quickly reiterate through whatever you're doing. Maybe it's a concept sculpt and you want to see how does it look like with a heavy top-down light, or what does it look like when he's at the Oscars, you know, whatever it might be. I think this lighting thing is really nice for prototyping and also for final images. So let's just start this one here, and you can see it's kind of reminiscent of the one we just did in the tutorial, but there's more focus on lighting it from the front, and still this kind of sickly light, and we have a little bit of SSS in it. And you could totally go in and, you know, change the lights around and maybe move this up or something like this. That would really delete one light or something. Yeah. So you can change the feel and the look of a scene really, really quickly.
So this here is essentially just a bunch of light setups like this. It's 20 light setups which have already been done for you. And somebody asked us, I think some months ago, why do we need this? And he was like, well, I can do this, and I can do this in all these steps. And he just listed all these steps here. He's like, first I got to do the lights and setup. And essentially, it's just a bunch of light setups which have been pre-made for you. You can totally do this yourself.
Yeah.
You don't need this. It's just going to help you a lot. If you want to do some product shots, or if you want to do final renders or whatever it is, it's just going to help you. It's not at all a necessity. But if you want to concept sculpting or whatever it is you want to do, or present it for, modeling show reels, general texturing show, whatever it is, this is really going to just spice up your reel.
Spice up your life. We also have a free version of all this, so it includes 1 light setup, so you can test it out for free. Yeah. See how you like it.
It's available for MODO, for Maya. For Maya, it's available for Viri and Arnold, and the free setup is available for all of those.
But yeah, it's really quick to use. There's even a breath chart included.
Ooh, look at that.
But yeah, give it a shot. See if you like it. Test out the free version.
We personally use this a lot whenever we make thumbnails and all that stuff.
That was why we started making it, because we were tired of lighting things all the time. Yeah. So we're like, oh, let's make a lighting scene.
We've done it now.
Yeah.
You can also just set it up, drag your model in, and you can just render out all the setups at once, at one go as well, and just see which one you prefer, and just keep working on those.
So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.
Yeah.
It was a different one.
Yeah.
Lighting. So that's a first.
Let us know if you want to see more lighting content as well.
So thank you guys so much for watching, and if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you.